There's something about being used that doesn't quite hurt the way people think it does. It's not loud or sudden, it's slow. 1,000 quiet cuts that bleed you dry before you even notice you're hemorrhaging. For me, it was the moment my father said, "If you won't support your brother, then you're not our daughter." It didn't sting, not the way it was probably meant to. Instead, I felt still, no sadness, no rage, just silence inside. The kind of silence that comes after years of doing everything for a family that only loved you when you were useful. 3 years. That's how long I'd babysat Daniel's kids every time he and Rachel jetted off on another luxury vacation. 3 years of covering overdue bills, wiring cash during their so-called emergencies, fixing their messes because Emily, we're family. Family helps each other. They said that a lot. Family helps family. But somehow, that never applied to them helping me. Daniel was the golden child, the apple of their eye, the one who could do no wrong. He'd never so much as bought me coffee. Yet, I was expected to revolve my world around his life. I did too, for a long time, until I stopped. It began like it always did with a call from my mother, Margaret. She was chipper at first, asking about my week, pretending to care. But I knew better. I always knew better. Her real reason arrived within minutes. Daniel and Rachel are planning a little trip, just a quick getaway. They need someone to watch the kids, and of course, you're the obvious choice. She said it like I'd already agreed. "Mom," I said, "I can't. I have work." "Oh, stop it, Emily," she snapped. "You don't have kids. You're not married. You have all the time in the world." I froze. Right. Because I don't have a husband or children, my time means nothing. I'm a free babysitter with no life, no boundaries, no worth unless I'm of use. "I've been doing this for years," I told her calmly. "I'm done." The line went quiet. Then I heard the voice I dreaded, Thomas. "My father." "You won't help your brother?" he said coldly. "After everything he's done for you?" I almost laughed. Everything he's done for me? Daniel had never lifted a finger for anyone but himself. But I'd paid their rent once, covered their kids' school fees, took vacation days to babysit while they posted from Bali. I was the one who kept giving, even when I had nothing left to give. Then my mother twisted the knife. "Rachel asked you for money last month. You barely gave her anything. How could you be so heartless?" And that's when I saw it all for what it was. They weren't mad because I said no. They were mad because I was no longer useful, because I'd stopped being the doormat. I tightened my grip on the phone and said, "Mom, Daniel and Rachel make twice what I do. They're just irresponsible. I'm not funding their vacations anymore." My dad scoffed. "If you cared about your nieces and nephews, you would help." There it was. Guilt. Manipulation. The same tired song. And then came the final line, the one that ended it all. "If you won't support your brother, then you're not our daughter." I stood still, let the words settle, and for once, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel small. I felt free. "Well," I said slowly, "then I guess I'm not your daughter." And I hung up. When I hung up, I thought I'd feel the world tilt under me, that the silence would scream louder than their voices ever had. But instead, it was quiet, really quiet, peaceful even. No one called me back, no angry texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails, just nothing. For a moment, I let myself believe it was done, that maybe, just maybe, they got the message this time. I should have known better. The next morning, I woke up to my phone lighting up like a Christmas tree. Not just from my parents, everyone. Aunt Melissa, Uncle Dean, Grandma Jane, even Rachel's sister, who barely speaks to me. All of them asking the same thing in different words. "What have you done to your mother?" "She's in tears." "Fix this, Emily. Family helps family. Don't be selfish." Then came the cherry on top, a message from Daniel himself. "Daniel, do you seriously think you're the victim here? After everything we've done for you? You're a selfish, pathetic joke." I stared at it, blinking. The projection was almost impressive. Everything they'd done for me. Let's see: unpaid babysitting, unpaid bills, being expected to bankroll Rachel's shopping addiction, and Daniel's man-child lifestyle. Sure, what a gift. I ignored them all and went to work. That's when the real damage control began. That evening, my building manager called. "Hi, Emily. Sorry to bother you. Your father called the office today." I sat up straight. "My father? Why?" "He said you were moving out and asked to cancel your lease." I nearly dropped my phone. "I never said anything like that." "That's what I figured," the manager replied, awkwardly. "But I wanted to check with you before doing anything." A cold fury spread through me like smoke. My own father had tried to evict me. No warning, no conversation, just sabotage. I thanked the manager, hung up, and called Thomas. He answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. "You need to come home," he said casually, like the past 24 hours hadn't happened. "Is that why you tried to get me kicked out?" I snapped. Are you insane? You're not thinking clearly, he said, like I was the child throwing a tantrum. Pack your things. Come home. Help your family. I almost laughed. Help them? After they tried to manipulate, gaslight, and now control my housing? You told me I wasn't your daughter, I said, voice low. You tried to sabotage my lease. You've done nothing but take, and I'm done. He started to argue, but I cut him off. No, you don't get to play both sides. You made your choice. Live with it. I hung up, blocked his number, then Margaret's, then Daniel's. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't tasted in forever. Freedom. Not just physical freedom, but emotional freedom. I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. I wasn't desperate to be seen. I was done begging for scraps of affection from a family that only showed up when they needed something. I thought that would be the end of it. But that's when the unexpected happened. A name popped up on my screen, one I hadn't seen in ages. Olivia Rachel's contact. I know you blocked Rachel, but I need to talk to you. And just like that, the game changed. When Olivia messaged me, I actually double-checked the name. Thought maybe it was a mistake. Olivia had always felt more like an accessory to Rachel than her own person. She never spoke much at family gatherings, and when she did, it was always just enough to support Rachel's narrative, like the second act to someone else's play. So why was she reaching out now? I hesitated, thumb hovering over the block button, but curiosity got the better of me. I called. She picked up immediately, her voice low and shaky. Emily. Hey, I said cautiously. Didn't expect to hear from you. I know, she sighed. You're probably wondering why I messaged you. I wouldn't have if it wasn't important. Then say it, I replied. Because if this is about guilt-tripping me into helping Daniel and Rachel again, it's not, she interrupted. God, no. I'm actually thinking about leaving Rachel. That sentence made my mind hit a wall. I blinked. Wait, what? She exhaled slowly, as if saying it out loud made it more real. I think I'm done. I can't keep doing this. The lies, the spending, the manipulation. It's like living with a tornado that wears designer shoes. I sank into my couch, speechless for a moment. I honestly didn't think you'd ever say that. Neither did I, she admitted. But I've been seeing it. I've been watching how Rachel treats everyone me. The kids, your parents, you. And now, I see what I let happen. There was a silence, not awkward, just heavy with realization. Olivia wasn't here to defend Rachel. She was here because, for the first time, she saw the chaos for what it was. I should have said something years ago, she continued, quieter now. But it was easier not to. I told myself I was staying out of it. But the truth is, I enabled her. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. She maxed out my credit cards last month, Olivia said suddenly, a bitter laugh trailing her words. $22,000 in 1 month. Spa packages, handbags, VIP brunches, all while asking your parents for money for kids. I closed my eyes. Same old Rachel. And when I confronted her, Olivia went on. She said it was my fault for not making more money, that I should be grateful she even lets me handle the finances. I echoed. Like she's the CEO of your marriage. She's never seen me as a partner, Olivia muttered. Just a paycheck. And when she's not using me, she's using your parents. Yeah, I said. That's the magic trick. Rachel's made a career out of weaponizing her image, struggling mother, misunderstood wife, daddy's little girl. But behind closed doors, she's a hurricane. She leaves everyone bleeding and confused. I believe you, she said softly. I really do. And that's when something inside me clicked. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't alone. You want out? I asked. I do, Olivia replied. I don't know how. Rachel controls everything. The bills, the social narrative, the kids' schedules. She's always 3 steps ahead. Then we take the power back, I said. Together. There was a pause, like the air between us had shifted. What do you mean? I said slowly. We show everyone who she really is. We shattered the illusion. Olivia was quiet for a beat. Then, how? Start gathering receipts, I said. Her credit card statements, the luxury charges, Venmo transactions labeled groceries that are really for bottomless mimosas and boutique candles. Screenshot everything. Track the timeline. Show how she's been siphoning money from you and manipulating my parents into covering for her. Will they even believe it? She asked, skeptical. They might not want to, I replied, but the numbers don't lie. If we stack the facts high enough, they won't be able to pretend. I already have some screenshots, she said. She thought I wouldn't notice, but $6,000 at a spa, 4 more on handbags, 3 on flights. And she told your parents she couldn't afford school clothes for the kids. I almost laughed. She never expected you to call her out. That's what makes it work. She only surrounds herself with people who won't challenge her. Not anymore, Olivia said, her voice stealing. That's what I like to hear. She paused again. So, what do we do with the receipts? You send them to my parents, I said. Frame it like you're drowning. You're scared. You don't know how to support the kids with all this debt. You're thinking about leaving. Make them feel it. And then we wait. Sure enough, less than 30 minutes later, my phone lit up again, an unbroken stream of messages and missed calls. Mom, Emily, what did you say to Olivia? Rachel's falling apart. Call me, now. Thomas. This is spiraling out of control. Why are you instigating this? You need to help clean this up. Rachel, you manipulative little witch. Stay out of my marriage. You think you won, but you've made a huge mistake. I grinned at the last one. I called Olivia. Well, she said, that was fast. I could hear her smiling on the other end. She's completely losing it, Olivia continued. Tried to grab my phone, screaming that I'm betraying her. Called your mom crying within minutes. Of course she did, I said. She knows your parents will pick her side unless the cost is too high. Thomas told me I should be grateful. She even lets me pay the bills. That she deserves the finer things because she's raising the next generation. My jaw clenched. Yeah, until the bills are in their names. Then suddenly she's just a bit high maintenance. Rachel's now threatening to take the kids and leave if I don't get back in line, Olivia added. She won't, I said. She's never lived without a financial safety net. She needs you. I know, so call her bluff, I said. Pack a bag for her. See what she does. There was a long pause. Then Olivia said, okay, title, Cracks in the Crown. It didn't take long for the chaos to reach critical mass. A few hours after Olivia sent the screenshots, the group texts turned into a wildfire. Rachel was spiraling tears, shouting, accusations. I could practically hear the meltdown through the silence on my end. I was pouring myself a cup of tea when Olivia called again. She threw my laptop at the wall. She said without preamble. I blinked. Wait, what? She screamed that I was ruining her life, that I must be cheating on her, and that this was all some elaborate setup. I sat down, laughing in disbelief. So she's gone full scorched earth. She's calling everyone, your parents, her friends, our neighbors, trying to spin it like I've been brainwashed by you. Classic Rachel, I muttered. When control slips, she screams until someone hands it back. She's already told your mom that I'm emotionally unstable and being manipulated. Margaret called me and told me to stop antagonizing Rachel and learn to be more supportive. My grip tightened on the mug. Of course she did, I said, voice flat, because it's easier to blame you than admit their precious daughter-in-law is a financial black hole with a Chanel addiction. She told your dad we might separate, Olivia added. His response? If she leaves, don't come crying to us about alimony. I actually choked on my tea. Wait, he said that to Rachel? No, she clarified. To me, as if this whole mess is my fault. There was a beat of silence as we both sat with the weight of how backwards it all was. Olivia, the one who'd been bled dry, lied to, manipulated, she was the villain now. Just because she'd stopped being silent? It doesn't matter, I said finally, because this is working. She's unraveling. And our parents, they're starting to see what happens when the bills come due. It only took an hour for the next domino to fall. Olivia called again, barely holding back laughter. Rachel just asked your parents to cover her credit card bills. I nearly dropped my phone. No. Yes, Olivia said, wheezing now. She called Thomas in full meltdown mode, said I was abandoning her, and she needed help or building her life. She even tried to send him the full bank statement. I could picture it, Rachel sobbing into the phone, mascara streaks and trembling voice, expecting sympathy like always. And? I asked. Your dad lost it, she said, still laughing. Told her she was irresponsible, that she needed to live within her means, and that this wasn't his circus to fund. My jaw dropped. Thomas said that? After telling me I wasn't his daughter for not funding her spa days? Oh, the hypocrisy was chef's kiss, Olivia said. Your mom tried to play peacemaker, but even she sounded worn down. They're realizing she's expensive to maintain, I said. It's one thing to guilt trip someone else into paying. It's another when it comes out of their own pocket, exactly as I predicted. Rachel may have been the golden child by marriage, but gold costs money, and my parents hated spending money unless it made them look good. The next morning, I was getting dressed for work when I heard it. BAMBAMBAM. I froze. I already knew. I walked to the door, slowly, calmly, and opened it. There she was. Rachel, hair in disarray, designer bag clutched like a lifeline, tears streaked down her cheeks, eyes wide, breathing hard. "You," she hissed. "You did this." I didn't flinch. I leaned casually against the doorframe. "Did what?" I said. "Stop babysitting your kids for free? Refuse to pay for your next couple's retreat? Remind Olivia she's not your personal wallet? You turned her against me," she shouted. "You poisoned her." "No," I replied coolly. "You did that all by yourself. I just gave her space to see it." Her hands clenched. "Thomas and Margaret are furious with me." I smiled. "Ah, so that's why you're really here." She stared at me, breathing heavily. I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I need you to fix this." I blinked. "Fix what?" "Talk to Olivia. Make her stay." I almost laughed in her face. "That's not my job. You're my sister-in-law," she snapped. "You're supposed to help me." "I did help," I said, voice sharper now. "For years. And none of you appreciated it. You drained me, spat on me, and now that Olivia's seeing you for who you are, suddenly I'm supposed to clean it up again?" Rachel didn't respond. She just stood there, trembling. For the first time, I saw something terrifyingly real in her eyes. Fear. She was scared, not just of losing Olivia, but of losing the illusion, the safety net, the status, the control. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. I exhaled slowly, holding her gaze. "Figure it out," I said. Then I shut the door in her face, hard. She stayed outside for a few minutes. I could hear her pacing, sniffling, waiting for me to open the door again. I didn't. Eventually, she left. That night, Olivia texted me. Olivia, she tried calling again, said I was destroying the family. I told her I was filing for divorce. I stared at the message for a while, then typed back, "Me, good. You're finally free." Title, "What Freedom Feels Like." It's strange, the way life quiets down after a storm. There were no explosions, no dramatic finales, just a slow, steady unraveling that left ashes where the old life used to be. Olivia followed through, filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Rachel didn't take it well, not even close. She went through every stage of denial like she was auditioning for a soap opera, crying, screaming, bargaining, threatening, and finally blaming everyone but herself. She tried everything to keep Olivia from leaving, claimed she'd change, said the kids needed a stable home, begged, raged, guilt-tripped. But Olivia had already seen too much. And this time, she didn't look away. She got a lawyer, presented the screenshots, the bank statements, the absurd credit card debt Rachel had accumulated in both their names. There was no hiding from it. The paper trail was longer than Rachel's list of spa bookings. To my surprise and quiet delight, Olivia didn't just win. She wiped the floor with her. The court awarded her primary custody. Rachel's financial records showed gross irresponsibility. No job, no savings, no budget, no effort. The judge actually used the phrase pattern of neglect, cloaked in materialism. Rachel got supervised visitation every other weekend. Her days of being the queen of the high-rise were over. But the real kicker? She had to move back in with Thomas and Margaret. That, right there, was the poetic justice I never thought I'd live to see. The same parents who once told me I wasn't their daughter because I wouldn't bankroll. Rachel's indulgences were now living with her in their cramped condo, watching her tantrums firsthand. And spoiler alert, they didn't love it. Margaret tried, at first, played the concerned mother. But Rachel had never learned boundaries, not even with her enablers. Within a month, she was maxing out their cards, complaining about rules, acting like the whole world owed her something. Thomas reached out once, a brief, clipped voicemail. "You were right about her. We didn't see it before. We should have listened to you. I didn't call back. I didn't need to." Rachel's fall from grace wasn't just a win. It was a reckoning. The golden child had finally cost more than she was worth. And me? I moved. New city, new job, clean slate. I changed my number, blocked every last number from that part of my life. I stopped checking family group chats. I stopped wondering if they'd ever apologize. Because at some point I realized I didn't need an apology to heal. I needed distance and peace. Now I spend my time how I want. My weekends belong to me. No more unpaid babysitting. No more phone calls demanding favors disguised as obligations. No more bending until I break. I take myself out to dinner sometimes. Just me. No guilt, no second guessing. I travel when I want. Sleep in when I want. Buy things for me, not for someone else's vacation fund. I even made a few new friends. People who don't see me as a tool, but as a person. It's wild how quickly your life can fill up with good things when you stop making space for toxic ones. Olivia and I still talk occasionally. She sends me updates. The kids are doing well. Her therapist is helping her rebuild her sense of self. She's looking into buying a small place near the school. I don't know who I am without Rachel, she told me once. You're about to find out, I replied. As for Rachel, last I heard, she got a part-time job at a retail store near the mall. Margaret still tries to defend her, says she's just going through a rough patch. But the truth is, Rachel finally ran out of people to bleed. And my parents? They call less and less. The messages have shifted from guilt to bitterness. You really meant it, didn't you? We were just trying to keep the family together. You'll regret turning your back on your blood one day. I won't. Because here's the thing they never understood. You don't get to demand loyalty from someone you never respected. You don't get to weaponize love and expect it to hold. And you sure as hell don't get to cut someone loose and then act shocked when they stop coming back. It's been almost 2 years since I ended it. And in those 2 years, I've rebuilt my life from scratch. Not for revenge, not to prove a point, but because I was finally done surviving other people's chaos. Now, I'm thriving in my own peace. No more playing the supporting role in someone else's drama. No more sacrifices made in the name of a family that never saw me. No more pretending that love and obligation are the same thing. I'm not the daughter they remember. I'm not the sister they depended on. I'm just Emily. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. Story 2. I never thought a single gift could change the course of a marriage. But here we are. Let me rewind a bit. My name's Emily. I'm 31. I've been married to Mark, 34, for 3 years, and we dated for about that long before tying the knot. We had a pretty solid relationship, great communication, shared goals, and for the most part, aligned values. At least I thought so. But there was always one wild card in the mix, his younger sister, Bella. Bella is 28 now. And to put it politely, she's a handful. The kind of adult who still throws fits when things don't go her way. She's the youngest of 3 and the only girl. So naturally, she grew up swaddled in attention and indulgence. Her parents doted on her. Mark, even more so. I've always tried to stay neutral. I wasn't rude, but I didn't coddle her either. And from day one, she hated that. She wanted me to treat her like some queen bee, and when I didn't, the cold shoulder began. Sarcastic digs, passive-aggressive jabs, nothing outright, but enough to be irritating. Mark noticed, of course. He told me I should make more of an effort to get along with her. But honestly, I didn't see the point. I wasn't looking to be her BFF. I just wanted civility. Over time, he stopped pushing, and I thought we'd reached a silent understanding. Until Bella's birthday 2 weeks ago. I showed up to her party with a thoughtful gift, something modest, as Mark and I had agreed. But then he stood up during the celebration and presented her with a dazzling luxury jewelry set. I recognized it immediately. Bella had been gushing about it for weeks. It cost $25,000. I was stunned, not just by the gift itself, but by the fact that I had no clue he'd planned to do this. We'd talked about keeping things simple. We'd talked about our finances. We had a joint savings account. We both contributed to sacred ground. We'd agreed not to touch unless we were ready to start a family. So when I pulled Mark aside and asked what the hell was going on, he hit me with this explanation. He just landed a major project at work with a big-name client, got a hefty advance, and deposited it into our joint savings. Then, when Bella kept mentioning the jewelry, he felt like it was fate. He decided to surprise her. The kicker? He disabled my bank text alerts, so I wouldn't see the transaction. Did it while I was sleeping. His reasoning? He wanted to surprise me with the good news about the project, and later, he just didn't want me to panic when he withdrew the money for the gift. I couldn't believe it. I told him flat out that what he did wasn't just irresponsible, it was dishonest. That money wasn't his to blow on a whim, especially not on a luxury item for his sister. We'd made a pact. The savings account was for our future, for our family, for when we were ready to become parents. Instead of hearing me out, he snapped. Told me I wouldn't understand because I didn't have siblings. said I was overreacting, and called me a jealous housewife. Then walked off like I was the one being ridiculous. That one hurt a lot. Because yeah, technically, I've been a housewife for the past few months, but only because I left a soul-crushing job to find something better. He supported that decision, encouraged it even, and in the meantime, I kept the house running smoothly, cooking, cleaning, organizing everything because I didn't want to just sit around. But suddenly, in his eyes, I was useless. I left the party early, drove around for a bit before breaking down in tears and calling my parents. I packed a bag that night and moved back in with them for some space. Mark didn't show up, didn't call, just sent a message the next day saying he wanted to work on things, but he wasn't going to apologize for doing something nice for his sister. The nerve. We went back and forth for a while, mostly through texts. I stood my ground, he stood his, and 2 weeks passed with no real progress. Then he showed up out of the blue, said it was urgent. My parents reluctantly let him in. He was pale, sweating, clearly panicked. Turns out, the project he bragged about? Gone. His company lost the client, and now they had to refund the entire advance, including the $25K he'd already spent. His boss gave him until the end of the week to return the money or risk serious consequences at work. He'd gone to Bella first, asked her to return the gift. She refused, said she was too emotionally attached to the jewelry and that it would be too painful to give it back. Threw a tantrum when he pushed. Mark was floored. I wasn't. Then he called his parents. His dad sympathized, but his mom, nope, said it was wrong of him to ask for the gift back. Told him to deal with it himself. Even his younger brother refused to get involved. With no one else to turn to, he came to me. And here's the part that really got me. He asked if we could withdraw another $25 from our joint savings to cover the refund. Promised he'd make it back soon. Swore he was sorry. Claimed he could have just taken it without asking, but didn't, because he wanted to prove he'd changed. I didn't buy it. I told him no. He made the mess. He could clean it up. His response? He accused me of being unfair, said I hadn't contributed to the savings lately, and that he'd been the only one funding it since I quit my job. So technically, it was more his money than mine. That line sealed it. I reminded him of what he'd said to me at Bella's party, reminded him how he'd insulted and humiliated me. Told him that if the roles were reversed, if I'd pulled something like this, he would have dumped me in a heartbeat. And yet, here I was, still trying to have a conversation. He didn't know what to say to that, just started yelling, saying life was unfair and that he had no one left. Then he broke down, full-on sobbing in my parents' living room, and I'll admit it, I felt bad. Seeing him that way was heartbreaking, but it didn't change anything. I comforted him, gave him a glass of water, and told him gently that he needed to figure things out on his own. I also told him that I was going to speak to a lawyer. He didn't say goodbye, just walked out in silence. And me? I made the call. After Mark left my parents' house that night, I didn't sleep much. My heart was pounding, not from love or worry, but from the weight of it all. The lies, the manipulation, the gaslighting. And now, after everything, he wanted me to help him fix a mess he made completely on his own? Nah. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. I didn't want to jump the gun, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a $25 gift. This was about trust, respect, and somewhere along the way, Mark stopped giving me either. I met with the lawyer 2 days later. I walked in shaking, but walked out with clarity. We started prepping the paperwork. I wasn't out for blood. I just wanted peace, closure, a clean break. We didn't have kids yet, which made things simpler, legally anyway. Emotionally, that's another story. For the first time in years, I stopped checking my phone, waiting for Mark to text something kind, something real. But I got silence until 4 days after his breakdown, when he finally messaged me. It was a long text, apologizing for everything, admitting he'd lost his mind that night, said he'd decided not to touch the joint savings after all. He'd figure out how to pay the $25. Kay himself sell some stuff, borrow money, whatever it took. He just wanted me to know he'd do anything to make it right. He ended it with, "I still love you. I know I screwed up. Can we please talk before you make any decisions?" And that's when the second guessing started. Because as angry and betrayed as I felt, I still loved him. You don't spend 6 years with someone and flip a switch. But every time I remembered his voice calling me a jealous housewife, my stomach turned. My parents saw me struggling. My mom asked me if I was thinking of giving him another shot. I told her I didn't know. She didn't push. Just said, make sure whatever you choose, you can live with it tomorrow. That stuck with me. 2 days later, I told my lawyer to go ahead and file. I didn't even tell Mark. I just needed to protect my peace first. I had loved him, truly. But love doesn't mean staying with someone who doesn't respect your voice or your boundaries. About 5 days later, Mark was officially served. He showed up at my parents' door that night with a bunch of bags, my things from our place, packed neatly. He didn't look angry, just defeated, eyes puffy, like he'd been crying on the drive over. I opened the door, and for a second we just stood there. Two people who'd once talked about raising a child together, now reduced to strangers carrying heartbreak. As I took the bags inside, he followed me in. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice quiet. I nodded. We sat on the couch like two co-workers, awkwardly waiting for a meeting to start. Finally, he said, "How did we go from trying to have a baby to this?" I didn't have a clean answer, but I tried. "I think it started with the gift," I said, "but it ended the night you called me irrational and treated our savings like your backup wallet." He looked down. I was wrong. I waited, but he didn't say much else. So I kept going. I wasn't perfect either, but I never disrespected you. Not once. I gave up a job I hated because we agreed it was best for me, and you supported that, until it was convenient to throw it in my face. He didn't argue. Instead, he asked if we could try counseling. It would have been easier to say yes. Familiarity is comforting, even when it hurts, but I couldn't lie to him or to myself. "I'm not in a place where I want to fix this," I said. "Even if we could, I'm tired of begging to be seen, respected, heard." He got quiet, and that's when I realized he still didn't get it. Not fully. He thought this was a bad patch we could power through, that I just needed time. But this wasn't about a rough moment. This was a breaking point. We sat in silence until the last bag was inside. Then I stood up, trying to wish him well, but he'd already turned around and walked out. No goodbye. Just the sound of the door clicking shut behind him. That should have been the end. But this kind of thing doesn't end clean, because the next morning, he texted me again. Said he couldn't believe it was really happening. That he thought if he gave me space, I'd come back. That losing his job had been bad enough, but losing me, that was worse. He didn't beg, but the message was heavy. I read it a dozen times before replying. I told him I understood, that I still cared, but the damage had been done, and I couldn't undo the feeling of being second place to his family, to his ego, to his pride. Then I blocked his number, not out of spite, but because every message pulled at my heartstrings and made it harder to breathe. A week passed, then another, and then life started moving again. I was still at my parents' place, but I finally started pouring energy into something I'd been thinking about for years, launching my own business. I'd always wanted to start a creative agency, just never had the guts. Now, I had nothing holding me back. Funny how heartbreak clears space. I got a website up, reached out to some contacts, slowly started building something from scratch. It didn't fix the pain, but it gave me a direction, a purpose, a version of me that didn't have to ask for permission or validation. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. No court drama, no fights over assets. We split what we had cleanly, agreed to keep it civil. The day it became official, Mark handed me a letter. He didn't say much, just told me to read it when I had time. Inside was a handwritten apology. Not performative, just honest. He said he now understood how deep he'd messed up, said he respected my decision to leave, and admitted he'd prioritized the wrong things, that he didn't want to lose me, but if letting me go was what it took to become a better man, he'd accept it. He ended with, "Maybe one day, we'll find our way back. If not, I hope you find the peace I couldn't give you." And that was the first time I cried in weeks, because for all his flaws, I know Mark loved me. But love alone isn't enough, not when it's built on sand. I'm taking it one day at a time now. I'm not rushing into anything, not relationships, not closure, not forgiveness. Just breathing, building, and believing that maybe this heartbreak was a beginning in disguise. After the divorce papers were signed, there was no celebration, no sigh of relief, just silence. I didn't go out that night. I didn't drink or cry or rage at the moon. I just sat at my desk with a cup of tea and stared at my laptop screen, rereading Mark's letter over and over again. And then I closed the tab, turned off the light, and crawled into bed alone. And I let myself grieve, not just for the man I lost, but for the version of myself who believed that love could fix anything. The truth is, sometimes love isn't broken, it's just not enough. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I woke up with a plan that didn't revolve around fixing my marriage. I brewed coffee, opened my notebook, and started mapping out the next phase of my business. I wanted to build something I could be proud of, something that belonged only to me. And honestly, that small decision saved me. My parents gave me space. They didn't ask questions. They just let me heal on my own time. Every now and then, my mom would slide a plate of warm food next to me, or casually mention someone who could help with marketing or finances. Not pushy, just gentle nudges when I needed them. I started gaining clients little by little, referrals, old colleagues, friends of friends. Word spread. It felt good, real, like I was slowly rebuilding, not just a career, but a life that was entirely mine. Meanwhile, Mark faded from my everyday. No more texts, no more phone calls. He didn't try to get me back again, and I think, deep down, we both knew there was nothing left to salvage. He made his choices, I made mine, and now we were just two people who used to dream of naming a baby and buying a bigger place. And now we were strangers again. Still, I thought about him. Sometimes I'd be walking through the grocery store and see something he liked, his favorite chips, that weird brand of hot sauce he used to hoard, and for a second, I'd freeze. Memory is a cruel trick like that. It sneaks up when you least expect it, but I never let myself linger. Because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's this. The second you start romanticizing someone who hurt you, you forget why you walked away. And I didn't walk, I ran. I ran because he used our shared future to buy his sister a necklace. I ran because he called me names when I stood up for myself. I ran because he saw my silence as weakness, my job hunt as laziness, and my love as something disposable. So no, I wasn't going to chase a past that never respected me. A couple months after the divorce was finalized, I bumped into a mutual friend at a cafe. He told me Mark had left his job shortly after our split. Said he was trying to reset and was re-evaluating everything. Whatever that meant. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Sometimes healing means not needing to know what the other person is doing anymore. I was too busy focusing on me. By month 4, my business had a steady stream of work coming in. I was managing clients, creating content, even thinking about hiring someone part-time. I had structure again, stability, peace, and that was the real win. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't karma finally catching up to Mark. It wasn't watching Bella lose her sparkle when her brother stopped showing up with shiny gifts. It was waking up without a pit in my stomach. It was paying my own bills with money I earned. It was knowing I'd made the right choice even when it hurt like hell. One evening, I got home after a long client call. I tossed my bag on the couch, kicked off my shoes, and looked around. The place was still small, still kind of chaotic, but it was mine. I lit a candle, opened a window, sat cross-legged on the floor, and started sketching ideas for a new brand project I was excited about. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Truly, fully free. Mark did reach out once more, just a short message, months after we'd last spoken. He said he hoped I was doing well, and that he still thought about me. He didn't ask for anything, just said he was proud of me for building something on my own. I read it. I smiled. Then I deleted it. Not out of spite, just closure. I don't know if he ever found the version of himself he was trying to get back to. And honestly, that's not my story anymore. This is mine. I didn't end up with the marriage I wanted, but I did end up with something better, myself. A little bruised, a little wiser, a lot more grounded. So if you're reading this, and you're stuck between staying and saving yourself, I'll tell you this, you don't need a dramatic exit. You just need the courage to stop shrinking yourself for people who only see you when you're convenient. Walk away with your dignity intact. Cry if you have to, then build something beautiful with the pieces. That's what I'm doing. And day by day, I'm getting stronger. One client, one laugh, one quiet moment of peace at a time. Because the end of one chapter doesn't mean the end of the story. It just means it's time to write a better one for you, by you.